They just keep
Mid.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the CAPC workshop. Today is January 8th, 2025, 4 p.m., Beaker Springs Auditorium. This is a workshop, not a meeting, so we'll not be deciding anything today. But we have a couple of things on the agenda for the workshop. Number one is rubric for marketing event requests. Is that you, Heather?
That's me.
Okay.
So I've mentioned this before, and Mike also has a rubric that is in our folders. I made one just based on some best practices as well. And the purpose of this is to make sure that we're looking at all event requests objectively across the board, and that we have a record of how we're measuring them in case of audit or anything legal. We're covering ourselves. And so I wanted to explore what that rubric, do we want to implement one as a best practice and a policy, number one, and what that could look like. Open for discussion.
So just for education, what do we do now?
Well, right now we have what heretofore has been called the CAPC scoring sheet, which is this. Do you have a copy of this?
There is a copy in everybody's binder.
Yeah.
And it's based upon, really two criteria. Number one, the first criteria established at the beginning was whether or not the event is a public service event or it's a for-profit event. And then we tried to come up with a metric that would give a possible of 180 points if it was purely a nonprofit event for the benefit of the entire community. I don't think that we've ever scored anybody at 180 points before. However, we have scored people below 20 points just because of the fact that it was a for-profit event and it didn't seem to have a lot of basis. The second part of the metric was based upon the amount of income that we felt their event would go ahead and generate in terms of its gross receipts in lodging and food and drinks. And based upon that, we've seen everything from events that didn't score $10 to events, and I'll use one really good example, Springtime in the Ozarks, which generates thousands of dollars in tax revenues. So it goes back and forth. I think that the idea of a more comprehensive rubric is really a pretty good idea. I kind of go back to what you said, Heather, is that gives us the documentation of what and why for. One of the frustrations is that we do these little rubrics like this, but sometimes I don't think we pay attention to them. And we have, not necessarily at fault, but been very generous with funds. And I think sometimes we probably have given, $5,000 away and really never recouped anywhere near that amount of money in terms of those income tax receipts. On the same token, as a community benefactor, we sometimes have to weigh that and determine, what's the good for the community as a whole. So sometimes you go back and take a look at the first part of this particular scoring sheet and say, well, it was a great public service event. No, it didn't bring in a lot of money, but it was great for goodwill. So there's two ways to look at it.
That's Robert's.
Is that your
That's my dog, Cap. Hello.
I did too. I thought it was Ron.
It's like, oh.
Okay.
I wasn't going to use the Good Shepherd as an example, but I guess I could. But that's where we are right now.
So just a quick question, Mike, and it's probably already on here. For those events that have like major corporate backing, that's a minus on the?
Yes, it would be.
What number is that?
Well, if you were getting, let's go down to the, I guess it would be number 7. Duplication of advertising by CAPC or other identity, websites, done word of mouth. It doesn't necessarily that. And frankly, David, I don't know that we've ever had a major corporate donor come in.
I mean, it just seems that
But-
there are some events that have large donors,
Yeah.
and they have the funds to do this on their own, yet here we are giving them $5,000.
That would be correct. However, I'll go back to at least my past history. I don't know of anybody that came in with the big corporate sponsorship. I mean, there's been some small ones, of $100 here, $100 there. But nothing, for instance, like a major beer vendor, major beer supplier, a major retailer that would go ahead and underwrite an event. I think at that point that would be the commission's best case scenario to say, you're already getting money. Why do you need to come to us for those monies when in fact this money is intended for those that really don't have that ability to get a major corporate donor or a sponsor? So.
I think you bring up a good point, and we've discussed it before. One of the things that we can do is kind of have a scoring metric too, sort of like when you're in school and you have grades, a 90 to 100 is an A, and 89 to an 80 is a B. Depending upon where the person scores with the number of points they're assigned, we don't have to give them 5,000. We can say, kind of like we did in the last meeting with the steampunk event, where actually it scored pretty high, and we gave them $2,500. But if somebody doesn't, score within a certain point range, we say, listen, we're not going to do the 5,000, but we can do 3. And I think that we just need to be a bit more intentional about how we're giving the funds. And I do agree with Mike that we also have to use best judgment. Sometimes it's just something that is going to benefit the community, and it's not necessarily going to bring in lodging or restaurant revenue, like certain events do. But we just, I think, need something in place to say, we're looking at this objectively. We're applying a measuring stick, a metric across the board that applies to everyone. And here's how we're doing it, especially, going into 2025, coming off of 2024, making sure that we're remaining very transparent with the community and how we're making these decisions.
Let me offer this. For the New Year's Eve event, we applied to the state of Arkansas and received an $18,000 grant. I'll tell you, it was a 3-page application that I had to put together with a very lengthy narrative, and then we had to go ahead and basically articulate how we were going to benefit the state of Arkansas. And it was, I really didn't have any idea of whether we'd be successful or not. But we had to go ahead and basically sort of point by point saying, this is what we're going to do to help promote the state of Arkansas, and this is why we are doing it to promote the state of Arkansas. And I'll be happy to share that document because it was a 3-page narrative. And we didn't have to, I think there was 12, 13 questions we had to fill out, So we probably aren't even in our letter or the application form, probably demanding enough of what is the return on the investment going to be. I do know that other AMPs in the state, and I'll use probably Bentonville and also Rogers as a good example, what they want to know is how many rooms are you going to book? And if you don't deliver the rooms, they take that away from your funds. So you will be penalized if you cannot deliver on the goods. So, point in case.
I do know there are several events that, we're going to have 5,000 room nights. Well, none of us saw them, so I don't know where they were staying.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
There are some events that tout, I'll use an astronomical number, like 5,000 room nights, and then the event comes and goes, and all of us that own lodging are like, where were those people?
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, first-time events, they're just guessing. Usually, it's a, estimated guess on how many they think might be there. So events going on a couple of years, they have much more idea of what happens based on the past. So do we want to would take this, your rubric, and apply it to this form, or would it be a new form, or?
I think I would propose adding a couple of things, and one of those is the lessons that we took from like the Bikes Blues barbecue. What are the resources coming from the city, the police, fire, parking, and what is the general sentiment of the public? Now, it doesn't mean that those who are loudest, just because they're the loudest, that's how everyone feels. But I do think that it's important that, we remember our jobs here are to be responsible with a budget that serves as the marketing arm of our town. At the same time, the people in our town and how they feel about us are important, and so we do need to listen to them when they show up. So I think that if we could add something like what's the metric on the city resources and how disruptive it is, how many days is this going to take up parking, how many days are the neighborhoods potentially going to be disrupted, that might be a metric that we want to look at.
We could maybe just make it a requirement that when they get funding, they have to reach out to law enforcement and fire department and tell them what's going on. And because they have to apply for an event permit anyway. So,
Really good point. And I can tell you, we have an event coming back again, perhaps in the latter part of September. And I don't think it's going to be a problem to disclose this, but it's the Fat Tire Festival. In the past, they were probably the most exemplary of including everybody that was involved in the city, which included the PD, the fire department, everybody. And they really wanted to make sure that when they held the event, everybody knew what was going on. And I think it was a testament to just the fact that they kind of knew what they were doing. And I think that was a big help too. But I think your point's well taken. Have you engaged with all the other powers that be? Because, A, you will be taking up parking. A, you will be, probably needing some city services of some sort, whether it's transportation from, our transit department, whether it's security, what is it that you need? And let us know. So I think sometimes it's expected that we provide all those things just kind of because. So.
Robert?
Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to add on is our job is also to keep our city entertained, and we need to have diversity in a way that people think that there's always something going on in Eureka Springs. And if we make those applications too complicated or not interesting and people can't get money from us, then we might lose here and there an event, which, I don't know, monetary, maybe not might be feasible, but on the other side, it makes something going on in our town. So we kind of have to find the balance between, having restrictions or having rules, and on the other side, keeping the city vibrant.
Okay. So, do you want to come up with a new score sheet? Is that what we're talking about? Is that something y'all would be interested in?
Or I'm not, I have no pride of authorship. I'm more than happy to keep using the CAPC funding score sheet that exists. But per Colin's point, I would like to say, if you are having an event of certain criteria, for instance, we want to make sure that you've gone through the proper channels to get the permit and that it's within those regulations. Right. So we're keeping our city and our citizens safe. I agree with Robert that we also want to be approachable. We don't want to be seen as a bottleneck. We want to be seen as an entity that elevates those coming to do these things, but we also want to make sure they're safe, our town is safe, and we're being responsible with how we're distributing dollars.
Okay. Also, in our bylaws, they point out some of the events that come to us year after year after year, we want them to use this to start up. But then there's kind of supposed to get big enough that they can stop coming to us for money. There's some events will always come to us for money that they're nonprofits and they just barely squeak by. But that's something to keep in mind in the future. There's some things that we need to say, okay, you've been doing this for 2 years, we'll do one more year, and then you need to either come up with the money yourself or maybe your event just didn't work, But of course, in the 2 years I've been on this commission, we're in the luxury of having all this money in the bank. So we're not pushed the wall to go, okay, we got to really tighten it up and, which is nice. And giving the money back to the community as much as we can, I think is also a big priority. So, anything else about this?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to see added to the application how many years they have received financing from the CAPC.
That's a good idea.
That way we know whether this is our 20th time coming back, or whether it's just a new startup, so.
All right, thank you. Next, Eureka Sound contract review.
I've had Colin and David both look at Ron's contract. I've gone through it as well. I don't know that it's necessary to go through line by line of it. We did approve last commission meeting increasing that amount of money to $61,000. If anybody would like to see the contract, that'd be fine. Be happy to share it. But otherwise, I'm not sure that really, I think it's kind of a moot point to bring it up right now.
So what do you want us to do? Nothing?
It's up to you. Do you need to approve it a second time? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
have,
maybe it's interesting to know the key points of the contract, and that's it.
Okay.
Colin?
I mean, it's a pretty cut and dry contract in my opinion. The only thing I kind of would like to see is perhaps the CAPC start purchasing more equipment, so that way it doesn't all fall on Ron, because some of that stuff's not exactly cheap, and if it breaks, then he's got to buy it with his salary, and starts to add up. You got insurance and all that stuff. So I wouldn't mind us moving a little bit towards equipment. And since you're standing here, is there things especially that we could have permanently affixed that we don't, like maybe some speakers or the projector or something like that, that is maybe your equipment that you bring in every time and set up every time, that if it was the CAPC auditorium equipment, it could just hang on the wall forever? Is there equipment like that we could purchase sooner than later and kind of help with that?
Yeah, we are developing a video system right now, and that's going to have 2 permanent hanging points on stage and off stage. So that is something that the CAPC has invested in, so that we can up our game as far as showing videos. Now we can show movies. We have a film festival. The sound is a big rabbit hole. Lighting is a big rabbit hole. I would lean towards the CAPC buying lighting because it's part of a grid, it's hung, and everybody uses it. Sound can be variable, depending on the nature of the act. So, but there again, you need to commit some real money to a lighting system, lighting upgrades. Probably, 50,000 to 100, something like that. To do any serious lighting grades, unless you want to just, budget a certain amount every year to buy a few fixtures to, do like that. But, and sound is a pretty deeper rabbit hole. I would say you need to budget close to, minimum of 100,000 to 200,000 for a professional quality PA system that National Touring Acts will use that is right or acceptable. So. Right now, I do upgrade and maintain my equipment as best I can, and still paying some of it off, but it would be good for the CAPC to look into that and maybe consider proposals for the future to budget some of that stuff in.
I would think you want to write up a proposal, a list of things that you wish list or whatever you want to call it, and say, this is what I need to propose.
Yeah.
I assume that we maintain an ongoing inventory of all our equipment and stuff that CAPC owns. Most organizations do that once a year. They go through and double check that
Yeah.
everything listed in the inventory is there, accounted for, or if it's been disposed of, what happened to it. Just-
It's a little dated, but yes, I think one of the things we did do, but it's a minor amount of money, we did budget in, again, in 2025, what we call auditorium equipment maintenance and upgrades. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but on the same token, it does put us with a line item to take care of some things that may need to come about. On the same point, to Ron's point, lighting, video, audio gear ain't cheap. The quality stuff that is in demand today is rather expensive. So I think the best resource right now is to go ahead and maybe create that scenario
Yeah.
of a projected period of time, maybe over 3 years, that the CAPC takes a look at that investment
Yeah.
into what basically is going back either on the stage or even in Basin Spring Park.
Right. Well, as you know, what people want every year is the latest and greatest. And at some point, I might not be able to maintain that. So when that time comes, then it would be good to have something on the table that would suffice going into the future.
David?
Yeah, I was just curious as to, would it be best for us to lease or rent this equipment as things happen because of the fact that in 6 months to a year, it's already outdated, nobody wants to use it again. So we've spent $100,000 on something that is going to be sitting there that we can't use.
You can lease the equipment, and Mike and I actually talked about a lease with my stuff. And so far, I've not had any problems with rider acceptability. I can see down the road where that will become an issue. And there's some things we can work on in the meantime, making the workflow of the auditorium better. And, so I think improving the lighting would be a good idea. You can always bring in sound as something that, if you have to have sound or somebody wants this sound, but lighting is pretty much going to be hanging there. It's not going to be brought in every show, and everybody's going to use the lighting that comes in. So, and maybe look down the line as leasing maybe a main speaker hang, something like that, that will suffice for all the touring acts going forward for the foreseeable future.
David, in my previous business as a videographer, I did lease my equipment.
Yeah.
And that way I could, every 24 months upgrade it to something new and different. And that actually worked out pretty good because it was a fixed expense. We knew what it was. And then on the other side of it was it didn't, stretch the pocketbook initially on that initial outlay. So, there's some real validity in doing that. There's lots of leasing companies that do nothing but professional gear in that realm. So it's a good idea.
Robert?
Yeah, one thing I noticed when Madden was here in the fall, I saw them and I talked to them about their equipment, and it was like, oh, that you have a lot of equipment. They really had a lot what they brought in, and the one guy, he told me like, well, it's all rented. We don't buy anything wherever we go. I guess they have their warehouses or contractors where they can get the equipment, and they don't carry all the equipment with them wherever they go. They just go punctually wherever they have to record or whatever they need to do and get their equipment. I don't know, for us, I do see the point of having the lighting in a quality that we can use it every day, or how often we're going to use it. But the sound, yeah, that's probably based on who's playing, and that changes all the time. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if as far as the terms of this contract, I would say that I'm providing sound and lighting for the next calendar year. I think it'd be good to have a plan in place for either purchasing or leasing sound and or lighting for the foreseeable future, because I don't know, at some point somebody might come in and say, no, we don't want to use this stuff, and then then it's cross-rented, but like I said, I haven't run into that yet, but I do see that, and I don't foresee that happening for any of the foreseeable shows that we have, so. But it would be good to have a plan in place in the future to take a good look at what it would cost to upgrade sound and lighting. And if we're going to, keep doing, and video as well, if we're going to keep doing video, so. Which I think we're going to keep doing video the way it looks. The film festival has taken off, and we might have another film festival, who knows? And we show movies quite a bit, so.
Okay. David?
So Ron, for those of us that weren't on the commission when we approved your contract last year, can you give us, for transparency, what the differences are between the two contracts?
There's really not much difference. Like I said, there were some things that were included in this contract that 2023, the commission voted to pay me above and beyond the contract for booking in the park, and a couple of things like the Leatherwood event and some extra bikes, blues, and barbecue stuff. So when you added all that together and added it to, it amounted to about the increase that I got for the calendar year, which basically was not really an increase. So it turned out that the booking of the park and stuff like that was fairly time consuming, and and anyway, I just put it in this contract, and that's part of the duties that I will perform, as well as a couple other things, a couple of upgrades, infrastructure upgrades, and things like that. It's hard to define, I don't know how to define what goes in the contract and what doesn't, because there's a wide area of things that I do.
Colin?
I believe there's also a clause in there that superseded Mike's director power with spending money on acts. It gave Ron the authority to book acts, which has to go through Mike, so that was deleted as well.
Yeah. Well, there was some verbiage that
Yeah,
sounded
just
like I was
cleaned
going to
up
be
things like that.
making contract agreements, which was, the verbiage was wrong, but everything goes through the executive director, so.
Anything else, anybody? So Colin and David will review the contract, right? That's our procedure for doing this. Okay, anything else, Ron?
No, not if you don't have any more questions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions
I guess so.
anytime, so.
Do we need to add it to the agenda for the meeting?
We'll
We
have to vote on it, so yeah.
Okay, yes. Thank you, sir. Number 3, budget review, and I assume this is Ty.
All right, you should have a copy of the recent updated version. For tax remittance collection, we proposed a 3% increase. So that would be collections of $22,100,000 basically. What we did on all the expenses is we looked very closely at each line, and we feel like these are the numbers that need to be there. Now, that being said, with that revenue and these expenses, if you look on the last page, it's negative $295,000. We did reduce Madden. So that's not the line item for Madden is not the full amount that they requested. We've cut everything we can think of. We've added the $44,000 for the loan payment to the city in there. We've added $54,000 for parks on the very bottom. That includes $10,000 for trail maps and $44,000 for the Basin Park fountain that we discussed last meeting. That included the $10,000 for the Jamborica that was discussed last time. It included the 1% of collections bonus and payroll that was discussed last time. All those things being in there leaves us negative 295. So what we can do is we can go through this line by line and we can discuss what we can take out to make a balanced budget, or we can plan on using reserves to cover that.
What's that last part?
We can plan on using our reserves to cover the net loss. Those are our options. Or we can do a mix of both.
What was the reason, I mean, I get it, but did we ever set a limit on what should be in reserves?
We did not officially set a limit.
No. And currently there's how much in reserves?
Well, we have $2 million in the bank.
Okay.
We actually have two accounts, and Ty and I talked about this today. One is called the reserve account, and the other one is the money market account. Then we have an operating account, which is where we, pay bills from. Both of those accounts were created in 2018, and I believe the reason that they were at that time was that we periodically, back in the day, would shop rates, and I think we moved from one bank to another bank in 2018, but I don't think those accounts have moved since that period of time. There's actually 4 checking accounts. There's one checking account that has nothing in it, zero. But we've got, I think, $356,000 in one and $1.5 million in another one. So we have really never dedicated any money of those funds to any particular thing. The word that came up today, I think, in a great conversation with the city was capital infusion, which was new to me. But capital infusion basically says that you take money from reserve to cover that difference, but on the basis that you realize that you're going to put it back of some sort in some way. And or the other side of that is what you do with the reserves to begin with.
So basically, by having a net loss, you're planning on digging into your retained earnings, which is basically reserve money. So, but that is acceptable if you choose to go that route.
How much are we over in the budget?
Just under 300,000.
300,000.
295,805.
Huh?
Steve? 295,805.
One thing I noticed, our biggest position would probably be Madden, huh? Comparing to the 2024, going from a budget of 890,000 to 1.2 million. That one, if we would not go into our reserves, we would have to probably lower on that position. But then the question is, we wanted to use a little bit of our reserves to get something back and give something back, because I still believe we don't need $2 million in the bank for marketing. We kind of have to maybe revitalize our market for 2025 and see how much we can harvest at the end of the year. One thing I noticed real quick, the COX, that's almost at the end. Telephone and internet, even from 10,000, or actually from the actual amount till November, from 7,644 to 23,000. Why did that jump up 3 times?
That was the increase due to the upgrade that we did this year.
We went from copper to fiber optic to go ahead and take a gigahertz up and a gigahertz down. We were having speeds, Robert, sometimes our upload speeds were higher than our download speeds, creating a real problem with our communications.
Remember that, yeah, you said that, yeah.
Yes, so that was the reason for that. That also, we're also are changing from what's called 8x8 telephone system to another system from ConnectTel, which actually is lower than the bill that we're getting right now. There's a significant problem with our telephone system. But that's the significant reason is the Cox increase of going from basically 500 a month to 1,600 a month. And that's the basic services of going from a gigabyte to up to a gigabyte.
So it's a silly question, like, I know that the city is having council meetings in the same room you're sitting in right now, and they're technically using our Wi-Fi that we're paying for. Should we ask the city to help us paying that bill?
You'd ask.
You're gonna have,
That gets into that relationship that we have with the city and what we pay for, what we don't pay for under our contract and all that. It's very confusing, and we are part of the city, so, I mean, it's not like we're an independent organization that's contracted.
It goes off into some other areas along with the reason we're all sitting here kind of cold, because we have a heating system that's not functioning properly. So who is going to take care of that? And we have been the ones that have been providing those services. So that's the reason why. We are upgrading that Wi-Fi connection just to take advantage of what is coming in and out. But best case example was recently trying to go ahead and stream a movie during one of our festivals when it just kept buffering and buffering. And then really that is an embarrassment to us, as well as just a disappointment to realize that we're sitting in an opportunity to go ahead and have a quality product, but we couldn't deliver it. So it goes back to really what our facilities and the nature of the facilities are: lighting, sound, internet.
So what's everybody's opinion about the budget? We want to go through this and cut stuff, or do we just want to go ahead and use reserves? Colin?
I mean, it looks like the biggest changes are paying Madden and payroll. So
Those are the two biggest, and we added more to group sales this year too also.
I guess there's not really much we can do unless we're gonna lay people off or I mean, cutting Madden is a little easier than that first option.
Well, and we should reflect on the fact that what you are seeing actually is a $127,000 cut from their original proposal for 2025. So we actually did go back in and we took those funds basically out of what would have been advertising in terms of hard advertising. So the figure that they initially came up with was about $715,000. So we trimmed that back to $600,000. So that's the difference between, if you look at that spreadsheet, yeah, on your number there, Colin. I can't read it very well, but I think it was 700.
724.
Yeah. So we actually took 122,000 out.
And then 2024, it was 500,000, 506,000.
Yeah, the budget
my
last year,
question-
I'm sorry, the budget last year for Madden was $1 million, so we're basically increasing it by 225,000 for 25.
Robert?
Okay, yeah, my question would be only simple. So we have that amount in the budget. If things don't go the way we are hoping for, how much are we committed to that amount? Do we have a, let's say, after mid-year budget review, and we see that we're nowhere near our numbers for whatever reason, I don't hope so, but who knows? Are we committed to that $1.2 million, or do we have a chance to say, well, it's not going the way we are hoping? Can we cut another $100,000 off of that budget without breaking a contract?
Well, I know that, David, you've had the chance to review the contract. I've had the chance to review the contract. I don't believe there's an escape clause in the contract to suggest that we're not getting there.
yeah, I mean, it's just for me to review. We'll have to vote on it at the next meeting. And I'll probably, did you send that to everyone by chance?
Yes.
The contract? Okay.
I have not received any. I did not receive that, if you sent that by email.
That's gone out some time ago, so I'll resend it to you.
Okay, appreciate it.
It came out in November.
Okay.
There's,
Yeah, if you can resend it, that would probably be good. I think then I have it for sure quicker. I don't see it here.
there's another 20,000 that's kind of glaring me in the face, is the chamber postage.
Yeah, I just looking at that.
That's a for-profit, or not for-profit, but they sell those spots in that magazine. They should be able to fund the magazine through the spots that they sell. They offered me a spot. They're not cheap spots.
You know, that was my question before last year. If we would have the potential to create the visit the guide on our side instead of having it through the chamber, and then we might actually be better in the deadline, one thing, and you know, it would be maybe a better reflection of the town.
Do we want to be in the business of printing everything that goes into printing a magazine?
Madden does.
Heather?
What?
There was a PDF that went out. Oh, that's were you
No,
finished?
go ahead, yeah, sorry.
There was a PDF that went out that had the 2025 summary of changes compared to 2024. And when we take a look primarily at the largest difference in paid media, digital print, and out-of-home advertising, and then those key changes are actually listed. I had shared a few months ago a video photo shoot quote that was actually like heavily discounted. If we were to break those things out a la carte, if you will, we would be paying substantially more for photo and video shoots, preparations for winter shoots. Also, Mike said, you know, we're having technical rebuilds, the website being revamped, email marketing, which we haven't been doing. And I don't know if any of you are on Hot Springs email marketing list, but they're really doing it well. We're not doing it well. We're not doing it. So getting that going, to me, I think $295,000 is very fair to dip into reserves for, because it is an intentional, well thought out spend.
I don't have anything against it. I think that's correct, and I, like I proposed before, that we should go into our reserves and use some of the reserves for a 2025 budget, and we might actually have to add on. I still bring it back with the event coordinator at some point, so we might actually have to use a little bit more out of our reserves if that's going to be needed. But I feel not uncomfortable to spend a little bit out of our reserves. We're talking about, what is that, about 15 to 20% of our reserves. We'll still be on 1.5 million or more. So we should take that risk, if you want to call it that way, and move forward.
I would offer one thing that we've not done, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that we have done either a quarterly, I know we haven't done a mid-year budget review. That's pretty much the course that our city takes on a very frequent basis. And I know it seems like you guys have budget workshops all the time, basically to go over and coordinate those. I know that the income to the city is a little bit more difficult to manage than the income to the CAPC. We can advertise and bring people in, but the city can't advertise for certain things, I know. We would probably be mindful to just basically to be very pragmatic about a quarterly review of where we are, and certainly a mid-year budget review to take into account, you know, where we are. Optimistically, which I guess that's one of the reasons I'm here, is that, again, we didn't do anything the first 3 months of 2024 because we didn't have assets to do them with. We do propelled aggressively into 2025 already. In fact, I want to share with you in just a few minutes a new 60-second commercial that we got to see yesterday for the first time. And I think if anything else, it might make you feel good about looking at where we are and where we're getting ready to go, if that would be permissible. Huh?
Oh, wow, ouch.
I'm going to opine on that one. No, go ahead and play it, but I'm going to opine on it, and I'm going to stand my ground on this one, Colin. I wish you'd go ahead and play it. It's really very good.
Okay. Roll it.
Imagine a place where you're free to wander through winding curves cut by sacred water, through history's memoir in brick and mortar, painted vibrant like the future, where you're free to seek pulsing inspiration in a drumbeat intrinsic, the rhythm that connects street to street and soul to soul, where you're free to feel from the enchanted flutter of a first falling to the softness of gold falling to the exhilaration of free falling, where you're free to crave what is bold beyond hunger for a satiated essence, a sweet or spicy authenticity from tabletop to hilltop, dance floor to frame. What are you free to be?
I asked that the audio be changed a little bit, but the reason I like her voice is because she's not a radio announcer. I am.
She's what?
She's not a radio announcer. And I think one of the things,
Understand it, yeah.
It's hard to understand.
Really hard to understand.
in here, it's terrible.
Here it's horrible.
Okay.
I will admit, in here, it's very difficult to understand. But when you're up close and personal to it, it's spot on. So,
Such a critic. We know one thing, you don't want the voice to overpower the commercial. It's all about the voice. It's really about the film and what people are watching. She's kind of more in the background, sort of feeding you information.
I don't want to know who it is, but how many takes did it take for her to get the audio for this? Because like the first 30 seconds, I couldn't understand a word she was saying.
I can.
I'd like to go ahead and send you the actual cut because it will make a lot of difference in terms of what
Okay.
you're going to hear. This was very poor, and I think partly because some of it's feeding back through the microphone and some of it's just the quality of the audio itself. The audio is actually quite good. She's very good.
Okay.
How many takes? I don't know. She is actually the writer of the script, so she knew what she was saying, number one. But number two, they apologized up front that she wasn't a voiceover artist, but I heard it the first time and I said, yes, you are. And I said, actually, you're damn good.
Yeah.
And
Because I agree with Steve. We don't want
Yeah.
voice to take over the content. However, I don't want the content to be erased in my head because of the voice.
yeah, no, I won't go into it. I'm going to tell you the magic of voiceovers. The thing is, voiceovers for television are the voice is on top of the TV. It's not in the screen. What you see is what is significant.
Videography is beautiful.
Yes.
I like it.
The videography
It moves
is
really
beautiful.
fast.
But I did feel like I was trying to really pick out individual words and then put pieces together about what was being said through the whole thing and kind of making my own story up, which maybe that's good. And I don't know, I think some of it is the sound in here, but I also think that her register is of a pitch that for some of us may not register as well.
It is a higher register.
Some of us have hearing damage from,
That is very,
Should have Morgan Freeman do that one.
I'm sorry.
My goodness.
it may need to be in lower.
The three most requested voice actors are Morgan Freeman, James Earl Jones, and Matthew McConaughey.
Could we get them?
Yes.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones is dead.
Yeah, James
Is he
Earl
dead?
Jones is dead, but if we could
Yes.
have Morgan
Okay.
Freeman.
That's what I thought. No wonder he's hard to get.
If we tap into those reserves, we still might not
If
be
we could
able
have
to
Morgan
afford
Freeman
either
qualify
of
for
them.
Right after we had Taylor Swift perform here at the auditorium. So.
Colin, are you volunteering to be the voice actor? So
All right, anything else but the budget? We'll decide, of
Oh,
course,
Mike.
at the meeting on the 22nd.
I wouldn't mind seeing the auditorium improvements increased a little bit. Like, it was 35,000 for 2024, and now it's 25,000, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I might,
Yeah.
I might recommend, since we are going to do more budget reviews hopefully this year, maybe we work on a list of equipment and pricing and that kind of thing, and then we could come back and adjust the budget at that point.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Just,
You know, I'll say this, that we worked really hard on this, trying to come up with a balanced budget. I mean, that was our goal going into it. And, you know, Ty's right. We looked at every line item, and, you know, we took a look at, you know, our percentage increase of what we felt like was, you know, feasible. You know, and I think at 3:15 this afternoon, he actually went back in and knocked it down another 2%, you know, to come back with a lower income, just because, number one, we don't know what our income is, but we know kind of what our expenses are. And, you know, again, we have to be somewhat optimistic about suggesting that we think we've got a great marketing team that works with us. We think that we've got some opportunity to, you know, capitalize on things that, frankly, are really phenomenal. I don't want to take too much time, but we had a demo yesterday from a company called Placer AI, Placer Artificial Intelligence, which is a monitoring source for all things connected to your phone and location tracking and credit cards. And they've been trying to sell us a service for a long time. But they called me a couple of weeks ago and said, well, actually it was last week. They said, could we take a look at an event that you did and see how it did? So I said, well, sure, New Year's Eve. So I got to see the results a little bit yesterday, and 5.5 thousand people between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. were in the downtown area of Eureka Springs, of which 4.5 thousand were there dedicated mostly to in that area around Basin Spring Park. Now, that area that was measured was a polygon that went from the transit department up on Main all the way up to the grotto and kind of back into the hillside. So it's a pretty good geographic area when you get right down to it. There's a lot of people. Now, what we don't know is the economic impact exactly at this point, but what I was curious about was, number one, the numbers and where they came from, and the numbers were exactly where we market. Kansas City, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, New Orleans, Memphis showed up, Nashville showed up, St. Louis, Wichita, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Springfield, Northwest Arkansas, Little Rock, Pine Bluff, state of Arkansas. So the numbers were so good for that particular event that I've got to feel like, yeah, we can do this again. So we know that we can reach an audience if we got the right thing to reach them with.
We were at dinner the other night, and there were two couples behind us from Louisiana talking about how much fun that they had in the laser light show, and every single person that I've talked to about it just raved. So congratulations. It was, I'm sorry that I was sick and I couldn't make it, but I did watch at home, and it was great. So, yeah, but it was everybody I've heard, and just the people from the two different couples didn't know each other, but they also just said how cool it was to come to a town that they thought everything was going to be closed, and they are finding things to do. So again, they're saying there's resources they didn't expect that they were going to be able to find, and it was just lovely to hear that. And you can tell such a difference from last year to now based on the work that's been done.
The goal is year-round Eureka.
I'd like to point out that group sales, $93,350, doesn't include her salary. but I'd like to, at some point, when we created that position, to say that we need to see money come back in to justify that chunk of money, which I imagine is close to $150,000 with her salary or benefits and all that stuff. So I think at some point, I'd like to, some kind of worksheet that says, okay, this is what we can show for that $150,000. Because when we created that position, we kind of said this has to kind of pay for itself.
I assume there are team employee evaluations that take place, and that would be something that might be reflected in a group sales role. I don't know how, on that end, to that end, I don't know how deep metrics would go, but I do agree with you that, based on salary increase, based on bonus, we should also be responsible with knowing performance is good.
Right. Yeah, but that's ultimately up to the director. Also, I had a question for Ty. So the interest we make on the money we have in the bank, that's not tied into the budget anywhere, that just goes back in an account somewhere?
It's on first page, towards the top, account 4030.
4050?
And the rates did go
yeah.
down, so that's budget. The current rate is 4.56, so that's what it's budgeted on that amount right now.
4050? Okay. Cool. Great. All right, any other questions about the budget? We'll make a decision in our meeting on the 22nd. Next thing and last thing on our agenda for our workshop is the Madden Media contract review. Mike?
Well, I'll go ahead and based upon these numbers that we're dealing with, I'm going to have to articulate this back to Madden so they understand. Their understanding was from our last official meeting that the proposed 2025 MSA was accepted. That's what they think. I need to talk to Taylor Gossman in a little while and tell her that's not necessarily the case. So we will have to go ahead and have a discussion about that. They are being very concerned about that and want to know what we're going to do. And I told them today would be the workshop to discuss that. And then at that point, we'll go ahead and discuss it as we are. And then I'll report back to her that we're looking at this difference of monies, and if they would be so kind to either rewrite it or repropose it, then that's the direction we'll need to take. So.
Okay. Questions? Discussion?
Well, we probably need to get them a signed contract as soon as possible. I assume right now they're working on Faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got the one to sign the other day, and then not 30 minutes later, I got that it had been canceled by the sender. So I haven't signed a contract. I don't know who has, because they canceled the link on me.
I'm not sure why. On the same token, I had instructed Taylor that I would go ahead and you would have to sign off on that contract prior to anything happening with it. And I think that may be the reason she canceled it, because that was the original contract that we did not want to sign until we had this meeting and then being able to approve basically our 2025 budget. So again, what I'll need to do is to go ahead and articulate to her what we've just discussed here this evening and have them rewrite basically that money in, which basically means they'll probably have to go back and have a team meeting to figure out what they're going to do, because we're cutting $122,000 out of media. So, but Colin, your point is well taken. So I don't foresee it as a problem, but on the same token, we are meeting in 2 weeks. So we should be able to go ahead and have the budget approved at that time. So, which is a reminder, we are meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay. Anything else? Danielle, you want us, the conference, you want us talk about
You
it.
need to know, y'all need to tell me if you're going to GovCon or not. I need,
I cannot go, I can tell you that.
no, yes,
Yes.
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
And then I need to know.
Well, again, David and I may not be on this commission after next Monday. So I can't say yes or no.
I like the way you put that.
But I'll tell you as soon as possible. And I'll take two of these with me. If he and I are not on, I'll give these to the two new people and ask them to contact you right away. So,
Okay?
It is in Bentonville.
what?
It is in Bentonville.
It's Bentonville, yeah. So no one has to stay the night. They could drive back and forth.
But you can go for just one day, or you can go for the whole thing.
I'm going
And-
to go for the whole thing. I'm just going to get a hotel room and spend the night.
Yeah, and we're not, we're just gonna drive, or we have friends all over, so we're gonna stay.
So everybody let Danielle know as soon as possible. All right, anything else? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Stay safe, stay warm.